In the last several segments, you gave many examples of how a person with mind conditions is displaced in society. Then you made the transition from living with a handicap to exposure to toxic influences, crossing into territory where we're evaluating the environment instead of diagnosing one's disability. We want to stay clear from pointing fingers since this is a spiritual warfare, of filtering corrupt data instead of blaming people. Everyone is susceptible to internal dispositions and conditions that influence their choices. It is also everyone's responsibility to contain the corrupt data, create expectations, and set boundaries. Cultivate a welcoming environment that follows rules and maintains spiritual well-being. Let's continue to identify the impositions and isolate the obstacles to one's spiritual journey. Moving forward, psych abuse is like debilitating a handicapped person, instead of providing crutches to assist one in their journey. Your example coincides with segment 22 on influences. If one's environment is toxic and misconduct is normalized, the conscience is directly impacted in how a person processes reality, such as the inhuman treatment that leads to displaced authenticity, which, as you shared in segment 31, is the formation of conscience number 2. Let's continue with the immersion of this imposition that sets a person apart from society.
Here are several examples of displaced authenticity as a result of psych abuse. The condition where a person has formed the belief that they can't be themselves, perceiving that the environment only expresses love and respect to those who perform within the metrics of a likable identity. Pathology of social performance. A prisoner of fear, apathy, and possibly anger. Psychopathic lack of empathy for others, and pathological misconduct that is rooted from a violated heart. The perception that justice and human dignity is only reserved for certain genders, races, intelligence, heritage, or age groups, confined within the perspective that nothing can be done and that life is reduced to merely survivalism. Pathology of spiritual despondency. The perfectionist that is afraid to make a mistake, confined within the perception of stressing over satisfying expectations. Pathology of spending excessive time on a single function. Other variations include the belief of an uncapped metric system, where people are impossible to satisfy. The slightest changes causes extreme stress, as the brain tries to rearrange data. This is abusive when influences communicate goals, repeatedly change the rules, and criticizes the person under pressure of unclear expectations. Incapacitated from handling conflict, as an individual tries to process emotion and decipher structural compliance, particularly when the standards are set, but no support is received when others violate the rules. All of these are examples that sabotages one's authenticity into making decisions that either displaces one's role in society or corrupts one's character. If a person wants to maintain authenticity, respect must be cultivated among influences. Otherwise, anyone with a weak psych stature may develop any of the dispositions I described in this segment. Intentionally withholding education is psych abuse, as it debilitates a person from maneuvering through systematic structures, processing functions, and the elements of survivalism. Withheld exposure, training, and education predisposes a person to aimlessly navigate through life in confusion. Fear-provoked control, dependency on instructions, and sustained naivety and blind submission conditions a person in the pathological disposition of falling victim to predators. In the last segment, I emphasized on the importance of connecting and respecting boundaries. What if influences don't respect the person, dictating their personal needs based off of statistical data and treating them systematically off of symptomatic behavior? Such as when empathy, understanding, and guidance was needed, influences chose to tighten the metrics until the person psychologically breaks. When this happens, the data filter gets compromised, and the person is disposed to acting on suggestions and impulses. Why? Because the conscience got subdued by the overpowering environment. Intentional direction is replaced with chronic conformity, where a person does not question the origin of data. I'm not referring to faith or personal beliefs, but the pathology of swallowing anything that is given and acting on anything that enters perception, without discerning moral or psychological consequences. Long-term, pathological symptoms of displaced authenticity includes developing dispositions where a person has stopped thinking for self, letting others speak over their existence. Embodying the psych map where a person has stopped feeling altogether, a lack of personality in a numb spirit. Has stopped paying attention from awareness to distractions. Has stopped addressing conflict or addressing direction. of apathy and spiritual mediocrity. The person goes through life believing that nothing he says or does makes a difference in the world, because influences will just override his efforts and alter the outcomes. In replacement of authenticity, all of his decisions are rooted in subordination, perceptual acceptance, and a diverted conscience. So even though he appears to be doing everything right, the source of his decision-making is reduced to any voice telling him what to do, instead of him discerning his purpose. Which leads to the next topic, the unrooted heart.